All right. I am going to go ahead and kick things off. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be joining us from. I want to welcome you to the latest issue of our PeopleSoft Master Series webinars, Transforming Higher Education Through Automation. My name is Scott Anton. I manage business development with Gideon Taylor, and I am here joined today by quite the team. So let me go ahead and go down the line. Bill Gibbard is joining us. Bill is the managing director of Newbury Enterprise Services, a division of Gideon Taylor. Their strength is providing PeopleSoft services as well as being a UiPath partner, providing robotic process automation services and support. Don Horan is joining us from UiPath today. Don is industry lead for global, state, local, and regional government, as well as higher education. So Don, welcome aboard. Thank you very much for joining. And Len Zhao joins us from University of Alberta, farthest north of our troop here, and he's a senior business analyst specializing predominantly in process automation at the university. He's been deeply involved with their UiPath initiatives for the past few years. We're excited to have Len join us to share some of the story about the university's path to RPA and robotic process automation. We are recording this session. I'm sorry, did somebody say something? All right, we are recording this session. We will be sending out links to review it afterwards if you guys would like to. The agenda, very simply, Don's going to go ahead and kick us off after I get through a little bit of introduction he's going to be talking about industry trends in higher education and a little bit of an overview of what RPA is, robotic process automation. And then handing it off to Len to walk through a bit of University of Alberta's story and their experience with UiPath automation. And then I'll be bringing it full circle to show you an example of an e-form, which takes off from Len's description of some of the robotic process automation that they're using, integrated not only with PeopleSoft, but also with GTE Forms. So I know that there are a lot of folks on the phone on the webinar that are familiar with Gideon Taylor, but as a point of introduction for those of you who aren't, we have been providing PeopleSoft services for more than 20 years, helping organizations not only implement and upgrade and maintain their PeopleSoft systems, but also drive a higher degree of automation, enabling them to do things with PeopleSoft that PeopleSoft doesn't do out of the box. Things that can extend functionality to users both inside and outside the organization. So a whole range of custom self-service opportunities, as well as just making the most of delivered PeopleSoft functionality. With the addition of the Newbury group, we added Newbury Consulting last year. They bring a whole raft of additional PeopleSoft services and talent to the table, including a UiPath practice. So they have a strong specialization in robotic process automation, helping organizations, again, integrate that tool not only within PeopleSoft, but outside of PeopleSoft, allowing for organizations to do more with their systems than those systems might otherwise deliver out of the box. So we are big, passionate followers of automation and optimization. And if you guys ever have any questions with regards to that, by all means, reach out. We're happy to help. Robotic process automation, I'm not going to steal any of Don's thunder, but one of the things that is most intriguing for us is that you can essentially use bots to automate any process that a staff member or an employee might otherwise do that might be system related. So anything that you can do to assign logic and action to a process that you're looking to automate, you can leverage bots to do that, as well as tools like GTE Forms and other tools out there. But there is a lot of ROI opportunity to robotic process automation. As you can see over on the right-hand portion of our slide here, it can drive huge gains in terms of both productivity and return on investment by automating things, again, that your standard systems might not do out of the box or as delivered. And that can encompass any of your applications. So looking at case studies within HR, finance and accounting, campus solutions, and student-related automation, supply chain, as well as standard IT services. Just a quick, what we like to refer to as our NASCAR slide, giving you an idea of some of the higher ed clients that Gideon Taylor has worked with over the years. I know that some of you are joining us on the call today, so thank you and welcome. Before I hand this over to Don, I've got a quick poll just to get a sense of where folks stand today with regards to your journeys with RPA. If it's something that you're already exploring, or maybe something that you're already doing, like the folks at University of Alberta. So if you guys want to take a moment to respond to the poll to let us know where you are, if RPA is just kind of something like a glimmer in your eye, or if it's something where you've implemented a wide variety of bots for all kinds of different processes and have actually established an internal center of excellence for robotic process automation within your organization. We'll go, folks, another minute to respond. Looks like there are quite a few folks that are just starting to explore. So that's exciting. Hopefully we'll be able to provide some good information for you on today's webinar.
We're getting a few people though at each phase, Don.
Yeah, it's great. I'm loving it. Yeah, if you didn't get the free coffee, I don't know what happened with that. Must have been a one-off situation. I got my free coffee. So
yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and close it.
Yeah. Now, if you got quite the little histogram there of spread of where people are at with their journeys, which is it's great. Because I'm not going to talk too technologically here. Although I ran a large IT organization for the state of New York, I'm not an IT person, so you can save the technical questions for Len. You should be able to answer those. So you want to jump right in here, Scott, and
that would be great.
Get started. Yeah. I'm not sure if I have control of the slides to move them, or do you need to advance them? But
yeah, I can go ahead and share control with you.
Awesome. So what is robotic process automation? I like to talk about it in very simple terms, and it's really just computer technology that helps us build, deploy, and manage technology that emulates human behavior. And what do we mean by human behavior? Whatever people are doing on their computers, whether it's just simply on their computer, whether it's in a system, or whether it's some sort of activity in some sort of large enterprise software, our technology allows the emulation of their behaviors. So things like completing keystrokes, putting in information, moving data back and forth, items like that our technology can do. So simply the way that I like to look at it is I like to look at what an employee is doing, those mundane tasks, those things that they know are just simple items that really are more bothersome as opposed to enjoyable in their workday, are things that I like to tackle to automate. So when people talk about robotic process automation, they're really talking about a vast array of things. And they might be talking about something as simple as what we call process mining, where we're looking at a process and we're trying to find automation activities. Some organizations will give out free software. Large computer companies will give out free software that really look at someone's personal tasks that they're doing within maybe some sort of software that they provide an organization and help employees really automate those tasks. But what UiPath has is we really have a platform of automation, which we're the only organization that has a platform, an enterprise platform. Yes, muted myself here. I'm not sure I can advance my next slides. Perfect. UiPath really has an entire platform across an enterprise that allows you to be able to discover automations. One of the biggest parts of this is that we get asked when someone wants to implement automation, or RPA as we sometimes call it. It's really discovering those use cases, those problems, and those issues that they should first focus on. UiPath has this discovery suite that we use that allows you to see those individual tasks that people are working on. It allows you to see the tasks that they're working on with maybe their team or some fellow coworkers, and it allows us to look at the tasks that they're doing at an enterprise level across an organization, across the university, to find those automation opportunities. From there, our platform allows us to simply bring those automation opportunities in to help build those robots that we like to call them, to be able to manage those robots, to complete those tasks, and allows you to run those robots. And being able to do that, really the benefit that you have is you're really an accelerated development from discovery all the way through development of those robots and implementation. And what that does for you is it really generates that ROI very, very quickly. And then from the engage component, our technology has this engage portion, which one of the best features of it from my standpoint is really the data, showing that you're really getting that information back to the people who are paying for it. Your finance people to really show them the ROI. So we've got a question here. Let me just address it as we go. How does it differ from PeopleSoft test frame tool delivered by PeopleSoft? Scott or Bill, do you have any specifics on that? Want to address that now?
Yeah, assume that's coming from a PeopleSoft customer. So the last Oracle HCM user group, the OHUG user group, we covered that topic. If you're not a member of OHUG, come on over. Scott and I help volunteer for that one. So PeopleSoft's, I think the question is around PeopleSoft test framework and how it compares to the test manager. We won't go too deep because it'll get Don a little bit off his topic here, but it's a great question, one that in the greater Gideon Taylor-Newbury world, we welcome a lot of discussion on, because PeopleSoft test framework, you're probably using it because you want to do your update managers, your people tools upgrades, faster and cheaper. That seems to be the long pole in the tent, is to do your regression testing. And so my guess is that's where the question's coming from. PeopleSoft test manager is great because it's within PeopleSoft. So it knows all the PeopleSoft metadata, right? Was the process successful in process scheduler, right? But it can't really hold a candle to UiPath in terms of how much of the business process you're going to test, right? You're going to test PeopleSoft, what's in PeopleSoft. If you want to go upstream, log into email, grab the file, open it, read it, enter it in PeopleSoft, you're going to need a tool like UiPath. So I think more and more customers are going to start probably leaving PTF, depending on how much investment you have in there, and using a tool. I mean, UiPath is just a better tool for automation. And that's so what's more important, the PeopleSoft metadata or UiPath being a much stronger, there's a whole company, there's a whole company now built off. Go look at UiPath stock price, right? Built off of automation. So you'll you want the better automation tool or the one with some PeopleSoft metadata. Call me anytime on it. I'd love to engage in more dialogue on that question. I'll kind of keep an eye on the questions for you, Don. And I know you've got
awesome.
Some good material. We want to get to Len.
Yeah,
too.
let's get through this. So what am I seeing right now in the education industry? Unfortunately, we are seeing unprecedented levels of declining enrollment across universities. A lot of students are not going to universities. They're not seeing that value in education. We're seeing increasing costs as everyone is. We're seeing high prices of inflation, which are costing universities more, whether it be through paying for just simple supplies, food services, or technology. We are seeing higher costs. They're being asked to do more with less, right? We're seeing decreases in funding, we're seeing decreases in staff, and we're seeing a need to be able to address those issues by being able to be more efficient in the marketplace. We're seeing, again, a need to digitize. A lot of universities have gone have gone through what we call digital transformation, where they have done some digital transformation. Now we're moving from digital transformation to digital evolution. So taking where you have come over the past 3 years and now taking it a step further. The need to continuously digitally evolve will be necessary. We're seeing lots of challenges related to students, the student experience. Students are not feeling that they're not feeling connected to their university, both during their time at the university and post-graduation. The student journey is becoming much more critical to retaining students, to even enticing students to come to a university. And we're really seeing a lot of issues around mental health within the university sector. Lots of students are having emotional issues, behavioral issues, other mental health issues that we can help address through the use of technology and through the use of robotic process automation. And of course, we still see some of the issues that we've seen with IT now that they've gone through digital transformation. We have new issues that are popping up that robotic process automation can help with. So how can we take those issues and fix them? Well, the easiest way to fix them is through your people. And no one knows the processes better. No one knows how to handle the issues better than the people that are already working for you. And what our technology does is allows those people to be able to take those mundane tasks and eliminate them and have robots do those mundane tasks, but problem solve those bigger issues. So let's take an example. Say that your university has something like maybe decreased endowments, right? You're not getting as much money into the university as you once did through gifts. Now, the way that we would handle this problem with automation would be to go to the person that runs that organization and say, hey, how do you normally get money into the university? And I'm sure that they would say something to the effect of, well, one of the big ways that we get money into the university is by having a connection with people who have graduated. So looking at that problem and how they would solve it, we would apply automation and do something like maybe create a robot that scans people who have graduated from the university's LinkedIn accounts, waits for them to change job roles. And when we notice a job role, when the robot notices a job role, maybe on LinkedIn, maybe it just shoots them an email and just congratulates them. Maybe it does a Facebook post or a LinkedIn post to congratulate them, and then follow up maybe with an email to congratulate them further, invite them maybe to a dinner or to have a discussion, maybe a round table with the president of the college, and then come back to them and say something like, hey, now that you've done this, had this promotion, want to have you come to this round table. Oh, as a reminder, giving back to the university is important. Something like that. That entire thing could be handled by a robot on a continuous basis to help you get money back, to help solve that problem. So you need to think of these robots is how can we think creatively and differently and use these robots to do things on a bigger scale, more quickly, more at a higher frequency to help solve your problems. Again, the answer isn't necessarily the robots. The answer is the brain power of your people and using the robots to help you use their brain power to solve these problems, to help out your universities. So what can software robots do? Well, simply put it, I know Scott covered this a few minutes ago, but they can log into applications. They can move files around. They can write to databases. They can go on the web and scrape information, open emails, do calculations, extract information from PDFs, emails, forms. They can connect systems, whether you have an API, whether you wish you had an API. That's where the technology can be applied. I'm not sure if this is advancing, and Scott, I don't know if you can go to the next. Oh, there we go. So what does automation really do? Well, it really drives innovation. It helps you build a resilient, efficient, and effective organization, and it helps you accelerate the digital delivery of these first-class educational services. Whether you want to help students be able to apply more easily to your university, or whether you want to help them solve their mental health issues while they're a student, or whether you want to deliver some sort of services post-graduation to better engage those people who have graduated, UiPath has the ability to be able to lock those things along with the potential of other AI and machine learning applications across your entire educational environment. So where are we seeing the application of RPA today? Well, we're seeing it in three different pillars. We're seeing it in the back office a lot with finance, financial organizations love the technology to be able to do things like close out the year or to do financial transactions. We're seeing a lot with human resources, payroll, accounts payable. Those are kind of the back office applications we're seeing a lot. We're seeing a hybrid approach where some people are starting to use it not only for the back office, but a little bit into the admissions process and a lot's around grant administration. I know grant administration is a huge problem out there, and it's one thing that UiPath, along with our partners at Gideon Taylor, can really help support you on and fix some of those problems that you're facing. Also, we're really starting to move more towards the student-facing side of things. Courses, exam scheduling, facilities, registrar, student services, mental health, those types of student-facing applications as well. We're seeing a much bigger push this year into those. Obviously, with the pandemic has caused universities to really focus on those student-facing. A lot of it because of the problems I discussed earlier, where students aren't staying enrolled in colleges or they're not enrolling at all. A big focus is this year being put on the student-facing side of things. So more specifically, where can you apply automation in higher education? Well, we're seeing it across the entire enterprise. As I said, the finance people and HR people are usually the first adopters. They're the ones who love this stuff. But we're really seeing it in the academic side. We've got some calls set up with some professors that want to know how to use it to enhance the student learning experience, where we're going to be beginning some trials there on that. Procurement, student financial aid, IT, admissions. For those IT people out there, I know one of my biggest problems is Deputy CIO of the state of New York, password resets. So complicated, yet so easy to fix with automation. So I'd encourage you to reach out to us. Gideon Taylor especially can help drive that sort of problem solving. So one of the questions that I get is people don't really understand how the bots work. Do they work by themselves or do they work with a person? And really, it's up to you. We have some organizations that will have the robots just do transactions all on their own with no humans involved in the process. You just have the robots doing calculations, moving data around, whatever it is, processing forms as they come in, extracting the information out, putting it into systems. And we also have what we call human in the loop robots, where we have a human who might serve as a final reviewer or might put the robots to work in the morning and check up on them during the day. So it's really up to you. How do you want the robots to work for you? Examples of some, I'm not going to go specifically into this because I really want to get to Len, because Len has a lot of valuable information to talk about his experience in automation. But again, we're seeing just astronomical ROIs. Every customer that we have, any person who looks in the ROI or our RPA knows that the ROI is obvious. We've done things across all of these pillars: document processing, contact center modernization, cybersecurity, processing of benefits, fraud, waste, and abuse. You can see the value that organizations, we're talking millions and millions of dollars in savings because of RPA. I know fraud, waste, and abuse was a big issue earlier in this year for universities, whether it's attacks, denial of service attacks, or whether it's fake students attending universities. RPA can help you fix those issues, solve those problems, uncover those problems. So we have some case studies here that we'll pass out with the slide deck, make this available, but we're seeing things like PO creation, right? 4,000 of hours of capacity saved, errors reduced. Robots work with precision. Usually they're 100% accurate. What they're trained to do is what they do. We've never had a robot that's gone rogue who goes out and does its own thing. That's not how our enterprise platform works. I'm not going to say that about other things. There's been some free automation software put out that doesn't have built-in governance like our platform does. They put governance at the back end of the process, which that's just not how we operate. We want governance built into our product so people can't do things like store their password and then go share a robot with their friends using their credentials. Our product doesn't allow you to do that, where some of the free products don't have that built-in governance. Invoice reconciliation. You can spend some time and read these, but I think you can just look from the benefits. You're talking about tens of thousands of hours being saved. You're talking 8 times faster processing, 100% accuracy. The question becomes, where are you seeing problems? Where is your organization having problems with these processes specifically? Because these are things that we've done already, easily can be replicated. Who else is doing this? UiPath has a ton of customers. I just took a quick snapshot of some of the ones that are more familiar to me. You've got the biggest names out there for customers who are reaping the benefits of automation, who have great experiences. Reach out to these universities and ask them if you want how automation is helping them. But all these universities are really experiencing a lot of benefit. And I'm going to throw it over, I think, now to Len here. Actually, I just want to run through this slide. I've kind of already talked about this. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
I want to throw it over to Len to really tell you about his customer journey, what he's experienced, some of the things that he's done, and how he looks at automation. Len?
All right. Yeah, maybe we'll just back up a slide there. Yeah, thanks, Don. So my name is Len. I'm over at the University of Alberta. Sorry, Scott, if you could just back up a slide.
Oh, sure. And I've given you control. So if you want.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Let's see here. Technical difficulties aside, I don't see any controls here. A little bit new to me. So yeah, still back up a slide. Yeah, there we go. Now we got it. Yeah. So I'll give a brief intro on how we got started. I'll tell you 3 different stories, and then I'll talk about some of the things we learned. I encourage you to ask questions on the chat. There's just so many details to go into. Like, we've been doing this for 2 years, so there's only so much I can cram in 10 minutes. So I encourage you to ask those questions, because I think that's where you'll get the most value from it. So this all started as an idea. It came from an environmental scan. And by environmental scan, I mean like attending meetings like this and webinars like this, and hearing the stories about how much investment is going in from especially the private sector into automation, AI, machine learning, and like specifically RPA and chatbots. And like, for us, all these words were really intimidating, right? We understand like what they are, like they're the future. It's going to give us value, but it was like difficult to marry that potential with like value in hand. And I think a lot of universities these days are looking for value in hand because of all the challenges we are experiencing. And so RPA represented like a stepping stone in that space, in that machine learning, AI, automation space. And it was like a low barrier to entry. Like we're able to come in and try it out without too much sunk costs, is the best way to describe it. And so we went through with a proof of concept initially, where we basically were navigating without Google Maps. And if you're my wife, that's a terrible experience, right? Like it was tough to do at first, but we learned so much along that journey, and we figured out really what we wanted. We heard the things about like what RPA is good for. So you hear like invoice processing, onboarding, offboarding. There's a lot of like kind of catch-all use cases for it, and they're great. But like the best like Cinderella stories for us were the ones that are kind of unique to us almost. Like there are processes that really were a thorn in our side, and we took a look at it and we did a proof of concept, and then we piloted it, and it turned out to work really well. I'm sure you can attest that production isn't like a sunny side beach like that, but nonetheless, we got there. It took time, as I mentioned. And so I'm going to go into kind of a couple of the different types of stories that really gave us that value. Let me see if I can drop the next slide here. Oh, it's working. Great. So the first one, I'm going to call it my like Mayday story. This is like an urgent need with no time to react. So does that sound familiar to you? This is something that happened during COVID, as surprise, surprise. And we had no time to react. What happened is we entire university went online, much like many other universities, I'm sure, and we had to make changes to the PeopleSoft system to accommodate this. And so like that was a pretty strong motivation, but we had to get it done because like the announcement happened on a Friday and we're like moving over on Tuesday or something like that, something ridiculous, something really fast, and there was no time to really plot out the most easiest path. So it's kind of like if I wanted to visit Don in Florida, there's a lot of different ways to go there, right? I can take a train, I can drive, but for this urgency, we needed a direct flight. We didn't really have time to figure out like, what kind of snacks you want on the plane. We needed a direct flight straight to Don. And so we took a look and we used RPA to do this. So we processed 7,000, almost 7,500 transactions and changes to class schedules within our PeopleSoft environment that when we calculated the math, it would take one person the entire month to do. They would have to sit there for 24 hours, no sleep, no eating, typing this in at maximum speed at 5 minutes each. We kind of clocked it for an entire month. So imagine we had to bring so many resources to get that done. And so we did that over the course of a weekend with using RPA bots and through some of the functionality within UiPath to do it. And I'm just going to click over a slide real quick here, just to give you a visual, because I'm kind of a visual person. Yeah, I absolutely can't click anything here. Sorry, Scott, if you could just click forward for me.
Oops.
Oh,
there we go.
Yeah. So just to give you a visual of what that was. So every line on the left-hand side, you don't have to spend too much. There's not too much detail you need to know other than that. Every line would be one screen in PeopleSoft. So if you've used PeopleSoft, sometimes you know what that process is like to navigate to a specific screen to make a change. It's great because PeopleSoft has all the checks we want in there. So it has like constraints and rules that we want enforced. So if we were to build this like a different way, if we were to build like a backend process to do this, it would take a lot longer than that weekend to do because we would have to go through the backend tables to do this. We have a perfectly functioning UI that we knew we could do this through, but we just knew that a person could not physically do this over a weekend. It's just an impossibility. And so every line of those lines of the 7,500 lines was equivalent to one screen of updates on there. So that's the scale of that kind of Mayday situation that we did. And the impact was huge. I mean, this impacted every student on campus. Now, when they logged in, they could see where their courses were and then whether they're online or not. This impacted our staff, which were really stressed about that change. Our leadership, being able to react to such an environmental shift like that was hugely beneficial. It was really the people that benefited from this process doing it. I mean, our team was certainly stressed during that weekend to do, but to actually have tools to do this versus like, where we weren't able to in the past, probably, we would probably just have to delay. I guess it was a great win for us. Let's see here. Excel like AECI to do this versus a bot. What is the difference? Yeah, so like there is like the import capability that we've done in the past, and that really had to do with I guess how simple the structure was. If it was very simple and there's a built-in CI import tool to it, yeah, it's very similar in nature. But if there's like rules and multiple tables it links to, that CI import ability may not do it perfectly or may not do it perfectly out of the box. So people would have to then do more testing and do more validation. And once you're fiddling with the backend tables, you want to be pretty careful because this uses the front end capability that you already have. At least you have that. You have your current capability, right? There's no difference than if I asked 1,000 people to do this over a weekend and they're typing it in, they're kind of restricted to using that UI. So I hope that kind of helps answer that question a little bit.
Yeah, Len, this is Bill. Let me chime in there too. All good points. The factors that you put in for something like that are speed to deployment, right? So you were able to, solve a Mayday situation. You wouldn't have solved a Mayday probably with the App Engine and component interface that quickly. Also, sometimes it's like who's available, right? So with IT, sometimes is competing resources when something needs to get done. When I think one of Len's next examples here isn't going to be so much Mayday, right? Plan out when you can plan out and you get the right people. if you have the volume that you can have the bots go through the front door, it's just going to be more secure. It's going to get past auditor approval better. If you're writing, you're doing app engine, you're updating data behind the scenes. We all, have protocols in place for that and migration procedures. And so sometimes it's just a different tool, but you can still, Len, I liked your metaphor, right? I can still get down to Don's, right?
Yeah.
What's the right way for this time? So sometimes it is just a decision, but those are some of the factors you would consider. The last piece I'll say on that is sometimes you're outside PeopleSoft. Not every business process starts and ends in PeopleSoft. So once you're going outside, UiPath, right? A bot is going to be able to go anywhere.
Yeah, I was actually going to make a point on that, Bill. Like, what is the process beforehand, right, is something you need to think about. And when I see something like what Len has done with taking Excel sheets and then putting them into the system, I start to think about those other processes. One is that I talked about is closing out the year, right, where financial departments are maybe getting information, expenditure reports, things like that from the departments, and they have to enter that stuff into the system. Well, having a bot that goes into the email, reads the email, takes that file, extracts the information, puts it into the system, is extremely, extremely helpful.
And just to UiPath's credit, like this is one of those things where, like, if we weren't education, if we were like private business, competitive private business, this would be like a competitive secret. I wouldn't probably be so open to talking this, but like, universities seem to work a little bit different, and it's great. I feel so glad to be able to share this information. So we used a feature in UiPath called queues. You don't need to know too much more about that detail, but essentially if you take a spreadsheet and you go row by row, like you still have to sequentially do it. What we were able to do is break it down into each individual transactions, so we could send it out to multiple bots. So we sent it out to essentially a bot farm of our robots. I think there are four or five, maybe six, and that was the only way we could get it done over that weekend. Those 6 bots or whatever that was, they ran 24/7 over the weekend. So this is really one of those Mayday situations where we didn't board a luxury 747. We took a Cessna down to Dawn. We took the most efficient direct route, no extra planning than the planning we absolutely needed, and we made it as efficient as possible. I guess this would be equivalent to taking 6 Cessnas down to Dawn. So so that was a great win for us, and a good example of that type of situation. And I'll kind of talk about some other situations now. All right, so I call this learning to fish. Yeah, so this is one of those processes that we had in our finance side of things, where basically we had to like enter in journal entries. And the reason why we don't give everyone on campus the ability to enter journal entries is exactly the way you think, because we don't want them access to all those things. There's a lot of harm they could do if they start modifying things they shouldn't be modifying. So there was this tool that all our staff used to do the entry. And then that tool was only given very specific access to very specific financial holders, and they were able to do their imports. But that tool is like a little finicky, a little complex. And so what we did is we created a bot that would just be a spreadsheet of their transactions uploaded to a Google form. That's it. So instead of like going through the tool and this process where you're basically giving it to several different people along the way, we gave the initiators direct access to this form. And it's this form is just a Google form. They attach their file. They say that it's been confirmed and they submit it. There's some additional checks I'm not going to get into, but basically that's it. They submit it, and then it goes to our bot, which has the proper security permissions that are allowed and controlled by the bot to be able to perform those entries on the initiator's behalf. And so now, instead of having to go through like 4 different people, where it goes from like satellite units to our central unit, and then central units to like a data processing person there doing the data entry, it's now done through a little Google form that they have direct access to, and all the other people that had to like get in the process no longer need to be factored in. Those rules were built in, and so we receive like 4,000 submissions per year on these things. And each submission, each spreadsheet might have like up to 100 entries. So you can imagine like, and then each entry is a data entry screen inside of PeopleSoft again. And so you can imagine the volume of things that happen there and the amount of people that have to get involved. And from an initiator's point of view, it's not ideal either, because you know when you submit that someone else has to take it, and that someone else has to then do something with it, right? So you'd have to follow up with that person. And if that person or that group decides to do it at the end of the week every week, there's this kind of lag time, right? You don't know when they'll get done. You have to know the process schedule, right? It's not really real time. This way, we're using the bot as doing all that back end office work, where essentially the initiator sends it and they get a reply back whether it's done or not. And it's within the half hour, I think. Yeah, within the hour actually. So it happens more often. So we don't have that inbox full of things to data enter, and it just replies back to the user, giving them real-time feedback. And so again, the impact, as you can imagine, is largely on the people. It's on the back end people that had to get involved. I don't think it was an enjoyable like thing you had to do, because it would be usually scheduled for Friday entry or Monday entry, and they would like pile this up while they're doing their other activities and jobs, and then they would go through and they would have to submit all these submissions, and then finally they would have to email out to the users that's been done, or the users would just know it's done and go check and see if those journal entries have been entered. So there's a lot of value there, and for the end user, it's great. I know what happens. I know if it errored out. I know if I made a mistake, especially for mistakes. Like mistakes in the old way before bots would have been treated this kind of whole alternate flow that I can't even quantify how much time that might take, because it's so deviated from the regular process. Where this one, we're a little bit like restrictive in that, like if it doesn't fit our format and is missing data, we send it back as an error. So sure, the users may not like that experience initially, but it gives them real-time feedback, and it's really just like a training opportunity to be able to do that. I see a lot of questions coming through here. Let's take a little sidestep here. Thank you. Thanks for the comment, Lorraine. Yeah,
I think they're on that same last topic, the debating, PeopleSoft tool versus bot. So it's good. It's good chatter happening. Everybody's agreeing with you.
No, it's good. Like I said, there's a lot of ways to get it done, right? Some people like to train. Some people like to drive, right? It's just really figuring out what's best for your organization. And it may be best for that time, that situation, right? Maybe there's sometimes you do want to take a scenic route, or you do want to take a more luxury route to do that travel, right? You have to make those decisions for yourselves. And to really make that decision, I think the more information you have on it, the more informed you can make that decision. So, all right, let's take a look.
Len, there's also, there were a couple of questions in the Q&A. On your previous slide, you showed the form, the Google form that you guys are using.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How does the bot access that form? And then how much time does the bot take to process a form with 100 entries?
Oh, okay. That's a very specific question. It's pretty fast. It's like within a few minutes. That's why it's like processes every hour, because that's enough to, if everyone submitted 100 forms 100 times, we could process it in that hour, basically, is what we're saying. So yeah, there's definitely a volume thing you always have to factor in your calculus. That's more of a future problem though. The form itself, we have little Google APIs that are used in UiPath. So it's a UiPath like built in. It's honestly, again, one of those trade secrets. It's like a drag and drop interface where you specify like which ID you want, and it pulls that data in. Or you can even do it manually, where you specify the bot to download it as an Excel, like you would as a person, right? Like you as a person would, if you saw this form goes into a Google Sheet, you can go download that Google Sheet manually and then loop through as a manual way. And that's a good way to think of it. Like, how would you do that as a person? And then figure out how to do that as a bot, and then figure out how to maybe make it a little bit more efficient with the technology available, right? So it's not always one-to-one, but usually it can be, but not always do you want it to be, if that makes sense.
And then there's a follow-up question. Does the bot do any validation with regards to original entry, or is it just doing data entry?
Sure does. There's a danger in that, though, of course, right? Because if you get the bot to validate too much, especially when it usurps other functionality, you know how I mentioned in the PeopleSoft form in the previous example, there were fields with validation on there. They already check for a list of values and they make sure that you have specific things that are available before you can select them. Like if you usurp that thing, it's like another thing you have to manage. And you're managing rules in two places, you know what I mean? So this one, you're managing certain rules in certain places. For our GL check, we make sure things add up to 0, a pretty simple one, right? I mean, the human should be doing that anyways before they submit, but we add some of those like things that would really break the bot checks. But we try to keep those to a minimal for that reason. It's just, it becomes a maintenance. And you can put in and layer a lot of rules within the bot itself. It's just that, is that the right place for it? And that's another question you need to ask yourself. Was that all the Q&A?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, I call this one the circle of life. So if you work in higher ed, it's cyclic. We don't always have like a flat volume of people coming in. Campus spikes up during each semester, right? And so this is exactly about that. We process student hires. We hire a lot of students over at university, and they don't come in they don't come in like evenly. They come in all at once. And so what happens, like before each semester, it'll be like 1 form, 2 form, 3 form, and then 2,000 forms for hiring students, right? And not only that, if we don't process those 2,000 forms during that time, the student's not going to get paid. So we need to get them in the system. We need to get them going. How do we do that? So the old world, you do exactly what you think you do. You say all hands on deck. We have these peak seasons that happen. We can't staff at peak for the whole, whole semester, whole year, because there's just too many people on deck, right? So we'd have the people that would do the day-to-day operational, and then when the peaks happen, which is 4 times a year, we call all hands on deck. We might do a lot of overtime, but yeah, none of that is like great, because I don't know, if you don't do things every day, and I call you 4 times a year to do it, you might not remember all the processes, right? You might not remember all the things you did last time, and so. And it's stressful, right? It's stressful because there's a tight deadline and you have to get them all done. And so what we do is we use a bot. We use a bot to level that out, basically. And so the bot goes in on a daily basis and processes our forms, which are built in GTE Forms. And so they are great because they have all the rules built in. Again, like we're using the front end that works really, really well for that. It's built in a specific way that we really like in terms of UI. At least the UI is like the checks that goes in directly into PeopleSoft to make sure that certain things are not going to error out later downstream because of missing information or incorrect information. And so we are loading these guys in on a daily basis. So it never really like goes crazy in volume because we're constantly processing it. And if it does go crazy in volume, sometimes we might get like 200 a day. It just takes a little longer to process, but it does it overnight, and the next morning we can continue on with the process. So that's tremendous value. You're seeing the trend here for the people. For the students, for sure, right? So that they know they're in the system, that they're going to get paid, that their forms are gone through. For our staff to not stress out, with the pressure that comes in those situations, and for our leadership and our organization, like that's a tremendous cost associated to cyclic activity like that, right? Because you are again not staffed for those as a baseline. You're kind of cycling up your workforce during that time. And so we're saving on the overtime alone is quite a bit of savings. And about that ROI, this was one of those things, one of those pillar RPA automations where right after you build it, after a year, it pretty much paid for itself. And so what about all the subsequent years, right? What kind of value you're gaining from that? So that was a really good one. Again, another good win for us. And a good example of kind of highlighting the different types of situations you can use it in. I hope that kind of opens some minds on ways to use it. And none of these are like your typical like onboarding, offboarding, financial processing, or HR processing, right? Well, I guess it is all related to it, but it's not like your typical use cases that you see. So I wanted to give you a little bit something else. I also see some sorry, see some more questions here. Just got bot in the mind here. What happens in use cases that a bot encounters an error? Yeah, so error handling is important. I it, it 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 there's graceful ways to error it out, and that's the way we build our system. We didn't know this at first, to be honest. So it took us a little while to gain that experience as to how best we wanted to error out. Um, if I had to go on a trend, I would say we want to err on the side of where the error is just processed manually. I know that sounds counterintuitive because you want this automation, but what happens is if you start codifying your error handling, let's say if a field is missing, you go to this other area somewhere to find that field, and then you put it in and resubmit it. Like that's like maybe 20% of the work, but it'll take you about 80% more of the time because you've codified like 80% of your happy case scenarios, and that little tiny sliver at the end of exception handling could cost you the same amount of cost as your project, because that error handling is, again, another workflow that could possibly happen. So I'm not saying there's no value in that, but our default stance is to say, hey, we have a manual process that works. We don't get that many exceptions. Let's process all the good stuff through our bot. And then for the stuff that isn't quite working, let's handle that through manual entry. We still have proper reporting on it. And then if that reporting tells us that certain exceptions happen a lot, then we tackle those exceptions now. Now we know what we need, right, to get us to the next little bit, right? So I might do 80% successful, and I see of that 20%, it's only like maybe 19% is one error. I'll codify for that 19%, and I'll have like only that 1% exception at the end. And so it slowly kind of mitigates, right? Because it's usually like one thing that causes the largest percentage usually. Yeah. So anyway, I'm getting into the math now. So none of that's that important, but hopefully that you understand what I mean by that, why we would do it manually still. But there's plenty of automations we have that no longer have any real manual intervention anymore. Sorry.
I want to give Scott, we want to probably hand back to you with about 4 or 5 minutes to go.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Anything else that you want to close on, Len?
I'll hit these 4 real quick.
Yeah.
They're kind of self-explanatory. I think getting the right people in the room have been really, really important, like both in terms of stakeholders, support, and the business people, right? The people that know the process inside out. There's so much that goes unspoken when people are talking about the process because it's such an assumption. So we have to kind of shift the way we talk about processes with people in order to suss out all the real activity that happens, right? Because sometimes people might do something like on the side. They're like, oh, I entered this form and that's it. And you're like, oh, that's easy. But then what they actually do is they enter in, and if something happens, they go into this other system, they look up a value and they bring it in. But they don't tell you that because it's just part of their business process, part of their mind flow. And so those are the things you need to suss out to make sure that they're captured. Begin, learn, and grow. I think that's part of our experiment process. Keeping it simple. Like if you can reduce to the point where you're missing things and then add back in, that's the level of simplicity that we found really helped us get started and continue forward. And take a long-term view on this. Like you'll go through troughs and valleys of like almost like despair as you like encounter challenges, and as you get through them, like this encouragement, and then you'll find new challenges and then encouragement again. But look in the long term of whether this is something that's going to be growing in the future or diminishing in the future. And I think it's pretty clear automation, AI, RPA is going to be growing in the future quite dramatically.
Awesome. Len, thank you very much. I could continue listening to you for a long time. And I would suspect that if this session were longer, that there would be even more questions. So I appreciate your involvement and all the information you shared.
I appreciate it.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in and to Len's point, that circle of life that he was talking about, kind of complete that circle because as Len had mentioned, one of the other tools that University of Alberta uses is GTE Forms. So for those of you who are not familiar with GTE Forms, I wanted to take a moment just to show you what that can look like. This is a student hire form that is used by the University of South Carolina. So it's not actually the one that University of Alberta uses, but you did see a couple of screenshots that Len shared with regards to those. But let me show you what an e-form can look like for that student hire process. And I'll point out how this process is improved or enhanced with UiPath, with RPA. So in this case, we're searching for a student that we want to hire. And this might already be a form that has been pre-populated by a bot. So when I bring up this form in my to-do list, my work list for approvals and reviews, it already has all the information populated, whether that is from the eForm logic itself built into the eForm inside PeopleSoft, or potentially these fields have all been populated by a bot that's taken this as part of a mass action process to load up all of those student hires that are coming in and initiate an individual eForm for each one of them that then routes for approval and then automatically updates PeopleSoft. In this case, this particular form is part of it is being manually entered by a staff member at the University of South Carolina. So you see that there are a number of job-related fields there that are going to be entered by the staff member. Those would normally, if this were a mass action initiated by a bot, those would already be populated by the data that the bot has input into the form. Within these eForms, folks are configuring logic to make sure that the data that the user is entering is accurate. It's automatically defaulting other data based on data that's being entered, selections that are being made. It's executing all kinds of validations and edits. And then you also see some grids in here that are providing for the opportunity for repeating rows of information, whether those are distributions, account funding. And similar to bots, when you're dealing with GTE forms, you're incorporating all of the logic from a business process, taking that out of somebody's head and incorporating that into the logic within the form so that it's actually executing everything that a person would normally do if they're initiating a transaction like this or reviewing a transaction like this, approving a transaction like this. And then it takes the responsibility then, once the approvals are gained, of automatically updating that information within PeopleSoft and executing that hire, in this case, of that student. So here we've got a document upload. We've got some instructional text above that. So it's a very intuitive, user-friendly process that we've created as part of this eForm transaction. And it's all fluid. So we're going to go ahead and submit. It's going to route through whatever approvals it needs to. And then ultimately, it's going to hit the system and update a number of different PeopleSoft components. In this case, this particular form that South Carolina uses, I think, updates 4 or 5 different components as part of this transaction. So one of the, to Len's point, he had mentioned that it's really on a case-by-case basis, trying to determine when to use a particular tool, whether that might be an RPA bot, whether that is an eForm, whether that's something else entirely, just custom programming to automate a process. And those are questions that we love to help folks explore and understand. So certainly keep Gideon Taylor, UiPath, Newbury in mind if you're looking at automating business processes to try to figure out what the best tool is to use, what the best approach is. Is this a mass action where we're talking about literally tens of thousands of transactions that need to be performed in a short amount of time? In that case, fantastic opportunity for a bot. Are these one-off transactions that might require a specific user experience, like you see here with a fluid user interface, and you've got custom designed pages for your particular institution, and have to execute specific logic based on your business requirements and how you want that user experience to be. Those might be excellent use cases for eForms-based transactions. Does anybody have any final questions? I know that you guys have been very generous with your time. We have just gone over the top of the hour. I would like to take a moment to thank Don Horan from UiPath, Len Zhao from University of Alberta, and Bill Gibbard from our own Newbury Enterprise Services. Thank you all for your help this afternoon. This has been great. We will again be sending out links to this particular session, and feel free to join us for other PeopleSoft Master Series. We typically try to schedule these once a month or every other month. We have one coming up about artificial intelligence and chatbots for PeopleSoft, so keep an eye open for that. We've got one comment or question. The GTE form you showed in the end was filled by a bot or by a person? Great question. So that particular example was just being filled out partially by the e-form logic itself. So you saw some information defaulting about the student that was being hired, carried in by the banner student system in that case into PeopleSoft HCM. But then there was additional information that was being manually entered by a staff member to complete that hire information. But in the case of what Len was talking about, those mass actions that their bot automates, that bot will populate all of that applicable data inside the e-form itself and then route it for review and approvals.
Yeah, ask us again in another month. You automated then.
You bet.
Well, thank you,
Very
Scott.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott.
You're welcome.
And Don, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.